It's the one and only Garland Nixon, radio talk show host, political analyst supreme, and a great friend of the mother of all talk shows. Garland, wonderful to see you again. It's difficult to know where to start. It's been the mother of all weekends, hasn't it? The blizzard of revelations about your country, my country, Norway, Sweden, Somaliland, everywhere in the world appears to have been touched, afflicted even, by key individuals who turn out to have been really quite central to American political, media, and business life. Where are you on all of this?
Well, there are so many angles that you could discuss this from. One of them I think is important at this time because of what's happening. Maybe one of the biggest stories is what's happening in the markets right now. That this casino that's built on credit, on debt, on what they call speculation, but it's not really speculation. If I can invest $1 million and then I can take out an insurance or credit default insurance against that $1 million, so even if no matter which way things go, I win. That's not speculation. That's a guaranteed win for the ruling elite. So I think when you look at the Epstein Files and you see them discussing pilfering the money from the Libyan Sovereign Wealth Fund after Libya was overthrown, when you see Epstein talking with the Rothschilds about the economic opportunities after the Maidan affair when they overthrew the government of Ukraine, you start to understand that when it comes down to all of these, frankly, demonic things that they're doing, that they are intricately connected. They're inextricably connected and linked to this global financial system that is coming unraveled.
Yes, I mean, the politicians and the media and the business class, from Bill Gates to Elon Musk to Jamie Dimon to the big banks, they're all in it together. How did that come about? Especially as these are the very same folks that are always telling us how much they love family values and how much they love the good old time religion. The hypocrisy unmasked is only one of the issues involved, but it's pretty spectacular, isn't it?
Well, it is. And that's I say this paradoxically, that's the good thing about Donald Trump that we've been seeing. And that is that, he's the mask off of this empire. This is, in fact, the post 1945, economic system and system of power that Mark Carney admitted to when he said, okay, we use different standards for right and wrong against our adversaries than we do against our friends. As we know from Rex Tillerson had a few years back under the first Trump administration, he had a cable that was sent to him that was similar. But Mark Carney came out and said, yeah, the whole system's rigged and we've been lying all along, but we benefited from it. Well, that's what we're seeing with the Epstein file, that beneath that system, the foundation of that system was a criminal group that had no morals whatsoever. It makes me think back to Ursula von der Leyen and these people saying, we lead with our values, we lead with our morals. Well, I noticed that Xi Jinping's name wasn't in there. Maduro's name wasn't there. I didn't see President Putin on the plane. So we see, the outcome is the intention. Your values are expressed by your actions. And we look at the people that they hated, that they wanted to overthrow, and their values are expressed by their actions. And look at von der Leyen and these multiple scandals in the EU and throughout the US. So it's the reality of this so-called liberal system being exposed to one and all.
So what happens next, Garland? Actually, I don't often quote approvingly Chuck Schumer, but he did take the trouble of counting the 3 million pages and discovered it was 2,700,000. So there's 300,000 missing pages in the 3 million batch that they said they had dropped. But there's another 3 million because they originally said they had 6 million pages. I mean, if this is the stuff they thought they could get away with releasing, God knows what's in the rest of the files. I mean, I could make a joke of it, but it's too serious to do that. God knows what's in the rest of the Epstein files. But is anyone going to be held accountable? What's the process?
Well, absolutely not, because what we're seeing now is the people that would hold them accountable are the people that actually created, were involved in these acts. So you can't ask the person who committed the crime to be the judge, jury. Often they'll say someone's the judge, jury, and advocate. Well, you're the judge, jury, advocate, defendant, plaintiff, all of the above. So I don't think they're going to come down on themselves for these criminal activities. But here's the other thing. You just brought up an important point, and that is, okay, we have a lot of missing pages here, which we know that terrible things are in. However, we have to look at that and say, well, then apparently there was a strategic nature to the release of this, that the things that were released for a reason. For instance, and people have speculated this, well, what if they're releasing a lot of bad stuff on Trump right now because they want him to attack Iran, and they're saying, well, if you don't attack Iran, the really bad stuff comes out next. So I think that they haven't given up on the Epstein strategy, in that they're still using it, saying there's a lot worse. There's other people. We could release it on you, and you. So to an extent, you could argue that the fact that they've released this much, and the fact that we know there's more really bad stuff, means that the more stuff is really more powerful, because now there are people shivering in their boots, people who thought they'll never release any of it. And now they're thinking, oh my God, if they let people know what I did, in my country, I'll get my head cut off. So that's the other thing, this strategic nature. One other thing that is important, and we have to be wary, there's some AI pics coming out. For instance, there's some pictures of like Donnie's mother or something with Epstein, and what we're finding out now is there were no pictures like that in the actual files. That these are AI pics that were created afterwards. There was like a mention of her in an email. So that's the other part. People are going to take these things, make AI. For God's sake, they'll probably put like my picture and yours with Epstein dancing on the beach next week, for all we know. But that's the other thing. You have to verify the things that you find in there, and let's not just take it a priori that everything you see on X, or upscrolled as it were, that everything that you see on there is factual.
Well, speaking of X, Elon Musk, there's no other way of putting this. Elon Musk lied about the extent and the depth of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He alleged at the beginning, perhaps presumably not knowing that these emails, particularly these emails, existed, that it was Epstein that was constantly courting him, inviting him to the island and to parties and so on. Well, the emails seem to implicate Musk as being the guy who was chasing the invites, chasing the dragon, as it were. It's humiliating for him, but it's humiliating for the owner of Google that he gave $90 million to Melania, to Epstein's mate, to make a movie, Melania, which one person attended the premiere of in London today. An audience of one watched the premiere of Melania today, but that money came from Google. Bill Gates is revealed in the emails to be even more disreputable, sordid, degenerate than we already thought he was. How do these moguls recover their reputation?
Well, a couple of things, and I'll say this with Melania. It's the equivalent of Hunter Biden selling, something that looked like my daughter's finger painting in elementary school for $900,000. It is simply, okay, Melania, okay, here you go. Here's $9 million for that. It's the president's cashing in on their status. It's selling access, things of that nature. And I think what we're seeing, and it's what we could expect with the ruling elite, with the political elite, is creeping admissions in law enforcement and in interviews and interrogations. There's a term, creeping admission. All that means is this: I will only admit to what you can prove. So if you say, well, Garland, were you at the scene of the murder? No. Well, we have evidence of you there. Okay, I was there. Did you know the victim? No. Well, we've got text messages between you and the victim. Okay, I knew him. So a creeping admission is, I'm all going to admit to what you can prove anyway. And so with Musk and the rest of these people, they're denying everything. And whatever comes out, once it's proven, they'll come out and they will say, okay, you got me on this, which just shows the duplicitous nature of these people. And I take it back to, how do they continue to argue that they're on the right side in Ukraine? How do they continue to argue that they're on the right side in Syria, that they're on the right side? When we look at the the unthinkable acts that they commit, that the lies that they're involved in to the people, the constituents of their own parties, the people in their own countries, and yet they're trying to convince us that they're going around the world to save the protesters, to bring democracy, to stop some evil leader who's not on the Epstein list. So they're being thoroughly discredited. And the people who still believe this garbage about Ukraine or Venezuela or whoever it is, Iran, need to start asking themselves, how can I continue to be misled by people who have been exposed as moral degenerates and monsters?
Well, as George W. Bush nearly said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But these people have been fooled twice, thrice, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 times. How often can you be fooled by a group of liars who are positively satanic in their public and or in their private behavior? That's the big question, isn't it? How do they keep these sheep down on the farm?
Well, that's the problem they have. Number one, it gets to a point where you have to be willingly fooled. It gets to a point where in order to continue to believe this, you just have to say, I don't care. I'm just going to go with the story. And the other part of it is, I think that's one of the reasons we're starting to see like these federal officers start to show up in the streets. We're starting to see National Guard in one city, ICE in another city, beating and shooting and doing all kinds of terrible things to people that push back against the system. I think they understand that the game's coming apart. This thing's unraveling. I think they understand that dissent will increase, particularly, as I said, people should understand that right now this market thing is really bad and it's not going to get better. It's going to continue to unravel, and dissent and protest will rise. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing the actions that are being taken in Minneapolis will continue to grow, because they understand that as people become unhappy, as people start to push back, the government will send in their goons to put down the dissent. And of course, leading into the next election, where clearly the current political class would take a thrashing, they need an excuse to stop that, to put it on hold, to get more control of it, things of that nature. And I think that's what we're looking at.
I mean, you mentioned the markets a couple of times. The contrived collapse in gold and silver this week, the utterly, ridiculously inflated stock market, bloated by debt and by your currency has fallen 10 or 12% in a single year. The dollar is tanking. The economy described by Trump in ways which nobody in the real America can even begin to recognize, the sense that things are coming apart, the game coming apart, as you just put it, with the November midterms looming. Does Trump survive this, do you think? I mean, he doesn't look a well man to me, and the Amendment 25 or some other method of removing him must be in the minds of the ruling elite in the United States, because, well, he's stumbling to disaster.
Yes, and of course, I think they need a patsy. They need a reason to get out of it. You know, I don't believe that Donald Trump is making a lot of these decisions. I don't believe that he has the authority that most people think that he has. And as an example, go back to COVID, and we were told, you know, when the market started crashing in October of 2019, COVID conveniently popped up, and then they were able to say, oh, we've got to print all of this money to deal with COVID, but it was really for crashing markets. 2 weeks ago, the Bank of some people connected to the Bank of England used aliens. They came out and said, well, the aliens are coming and we'll be told about the aliens and therefore the market will crash. I don't know how the aliens would crash the market, but for some reason we were supposed to believe that. And now, if you think about it, unfortunately, sadly, and horrifically, I might add, if they were to attack Iran and the Straits of Hormuz would close and the market would tank, well, there you have it. It wasn't that the market was about to tank anyway or was in the process of tanking. Now you have a reason. Well, it wasn't. It was the Iranians just hadn't closed the Straits of Hormuz. They don't have to admit that the system as it is constructed is set to make bubbles and burst. So it kind of scares me a bit that they may start a war with Iran to give them excuse, since they kind of flew the alien flag up a little bit, as they say, and no one saluted. So they decided we got to go in another direction. And it is perhaps they want the Straits of Hormuz closed so they can have an excuse for what's already started now. It's kind of like what happened in COVID.
You had a bank collapse this weekend, didn't you? It's the first bank collapse of 2026, and it's still January.
Yeah, and we had the canary in the coal mine about a year and a half ago, which was SVB, Silicon Valley Bank. If you remember, there were two banks that collapsed a while back. And when they looked into the things that they were doing, I'm not going to get into it, but it was the usual financial chicanery that caused them to collapse. And of course, during the Biden administration, and of course, they were both bailed out. And I think that was the canary in the coal mine. What we're starting to see now is that these banks do not have the finances to cover their debts, as do, neither do most of the corporations. And I think we're seeing the inevitability, to be frank, of 2022 when they seized the Russian assets. And at that point, very quietly, a lot of people around the world started exiting the dollar system, feeling that they were uncomfortable holding their money in Europe, holding their money in the West. And I think that was the beginning of this. Now, there are a lot of other structural issues where speculative capital just can't work, but I think that was the beginning of the downfall, because I think people started realizing, even if they couldn't walk away right then, that they needed to get out of there. And I would argue the big discussion in Europe, where the Europeans were only stopped by, a few courts from stealing all of the money, I think that cemented to a lot of people around the world, I got to get out of the dollar system. And I think that's a big part of what we're experiencing now.
I mean, whatever happened to auditing Fort Knox? Do you remember the Dodge and Elon Musk and Donald Trump? They were going to audit Fort Knox to see if all the claimed gold actually physically existed. And Germany discovers that they've got hundreds, I think 130 billion in gold. Where? In Fort Knox. Is it really there, Garland? Why would any self-respecting, big, powerful state like Germany keep their gold in America? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Bad news for Germany. It's gone. It's all gone. One of the reasons I think that Denmark and some other big players whoever it was, Denmark, I think, and other large players in Europe did not want to dig into the Russian funds was because they didn't want people to discover that not only had they stolen some of the Russian funds, but they've been stealing money from sovereign funds all over the world. And if anybody ever turns that rock over and the people in Dubai and Singapore, et cetera, start coming in and saying, well, I got 20 million in there, I want it, that they'll discover that the money's not there. And that's the problem with precious metals right now, particularly gold, because people have been selling paper. People have been selling, it's like selling deeds for lands that don't exist. And there are a lot of people who bought precious metals. They got papers that says they have precious metals, but it's gone. And if people start sniffing around the Bank of England in Fort Knox, they're going to find that money has been gone long, long ago. They'll have like a picture maybe of money in there, but of gold, but the real gold has been gone.
There's no gold in them there hill. Here in Shanghai, on the other hand, here in China, it's real gold, not paper gold. China in particular, but also Russia, have been building up gold reserves like Billio. And we went into a shopping area in Shanghai today, which sells beautiful premium gold with designs and collectibles and so on. There was a queue a mile long outside the gold shop in Shanghai, because there You get real gold. You leave with the gold, not a piece of paper that says you've got gold. Isn't it remarkable how gullible people are?
Oh, absolutely. And I think we're going to find that a number of these companies in the US that were selling gold, even on the market, that if you don't have the real gold in your hand, you got nothing. And that's and that's the nature of of speculative capital.
Yeah.
The truth is, for all of the talk for or against Bitcoin, Bitcoin's real in that this way, from this perspective. They don't pretend that anything exists in the real world. They say it's only what will somebody willing to pay for it. It's as good as the next guy that'll buy it. Well, the truth is, if you own faux gold, if you've got gold paper and there's no gold, or a lot of these other stocks where you have a company that's virtually out of business, living off credit, but the stocks are paying well, effectively you have Bitcoin, or worse. At least Bitcoin's not a debt. Some of these companies you buy stocks from, it's so leveraged that they're, billions of dollars in debt, and you think you're holding positive paperwork. So I think that's what we're looking at, kind of the Bitcoinization of stocks, where they're not really worth anything. So we're getting a crash, and maybe that's why they dropped Epstein now.